My name is Christopher Allen Maloney, and this is Why This Movie, a podcast where we talk about the movies we love and why we love them. Today I'm talking with Trent, one of my closest friends for over 20 years. He's an educator and engaged citizen from Louisville, Kentucky. Good evening.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. I look very strange in this video.
Well, I was going to say, you're cutting quite a figure these days. Are you wearing a bathrobe?
Well, I was hoping maybe. No, I just a hoodie. That's all. A bathroom.
I guess that's all right. Well, I don't know.
You know, I like to get comfortable before I talk about Groundhog Day.
Uh-huh. In 1993, Bill Murray teamed up with Harold Ramis, his old buddy from Chicago and collaborator from movies like Caddyshack and Ghostbusters, to make Groundhog Day. The movie imagines what would happen to one especially sardonic weatherman if every single day were repeated for him and him alone.
It's Groundhog Day!
Groundhog time.
1,000 people freezing their butts off waiting to worship a rat.
Weatherman Phil Connors is spending the day in Puxatawney, Pennsylvania.
Phil? Ned Ryerson. I did the whistling belly button trick at the high school talent show.
Bing!
Bang!
But Phil's about to find out he's not just stuck in Puxatawney.
Will you be checking out today, Mr. Connors?
Chance of departure today, 100%.
He's stuck
It's Groundhog Day!
in Groundhog Day.
I'm reliving the same day over and over.
Phil?
Ned Ryerson?
Bang!
Do you ever have deja vu, Mrs. Lancaster?
I don't think so, but I could check with the kitchen.
Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again?
Once Phil accepts that this is his new reality, he approaches it in several different ways. For a while, he takes advantage of a life with no consequences by eating whatever he wants, breaking the law, and going to bed with women knowing he won't have to face a morning after.
I like to see a man of advancing years throwing caution to the wind. It's inspiring in a way.
My years are not advancing as fast as you might think.
More coffee, hon?
Yeah, just keep it coming, please.
Sure thing.
It's real nice. Just put that anywhere, pal.
Good save.
Don't you worry about cholesterol, lung cancer, love handles?
I don't worry about anything anymore.
What makes you so special? Everybody worries about something.
That's exactly what makes me so special. I don't even have to floss.
There's a darkly comic and existential sequence in the film that has Phil testing the parameters of this new reality by ending his life every day, only to wake up alive and back in Punxsutawney each morning at 6 a.m. on Groundhog Day.
I'm a god.
You're God.
I'm a god. I'm not the god. I don't think.
Because you survived a car wreck?
You folks ready to order?
I didn't just survive a wreck. I wasn't just blown up yesterday. I have been stabbed, shot, poisoned, frozen, hung, electrocuted, and burned.
Oh, really?
And every morning I wake up without a scratch on me, not a dent in the fender. I am an immortal.
Special today is blueberry waffles.
Why are you telling me this?
Because I want you to believe in me.
You're not a god. You can take my word for it. This is 12 years of Catholic school talking.
I could come back if you're not ready.
How do you know I'm not a god?
Oh, please.
How do you know?
Because it's not possible.
In this scene, he demonstrates to Rita, his kind and patient producer, what's going on for him by predicting down to the second everything that will happen right before it actually happens.
What about me, Phil? Do you know me too?
I know all about you. You like producing, but you hope for more than Channel 9 Pittsburgh.
Well, everyone knows that.
You like boats, but not the ocean. You go to a lake in the summer with your family up in the mountains. There's a long wooden dock and a boathouse with boards missing from the roof. And a place you used to crawl underneath to be alone. You're a sucker for French poetry and rhinestones. You're very generous. You're kind to strangers and children. And when you stand in the snow, you look like an angel.
How are you doing this?
I told you, I wake up every day right here, right in Punxsutawney, and it's always February 2nd.
Eventually, Phil's approach to this time loop changes. He tries something new, maybe because he's all out of ideas, looking for ways to improve the lives of the people around town. By the end, Phil Connors is still a sarcastic guy and anything but naive or innocent, but he's gone through some sort of journey beneath the surface.
When Chekhov saw the long winter, he saw a winter bleak and dark and bereft of hope. Yet we know that winter is just another step in the cycle of life. But standing here among the people of Punxsutawney and basking in the warmth of their hearths and hearts, I couldn't imagine a better fate than a long and lustrous winter. From Punxsutawney, it's Phil Connors. So long.
Nice speech, Phil.
In Roger Ebert's essay on Groundhog Day, part of his Great Movies collection, Ebert writes, quote, "What amazes me about the movie is that Murray and Ramis get away with it. They never lose their nerve. Phil undergoes his transformation but never loses his edge. He becomes a better Phil, not a different Phil." End quote. According to the British newspaper The Independent, religious leaders have hailed Groundhog Day with its story of a man who must revolve in the same reality until he moves up to the next level, as the most spiritual film of all time. All right, so before we jump into Groundhog Day, we've often spoken about how you generally don't care for movies. You have no interest in motion pictures, the talkies.
Yeah.
I think there are a great many well-beloved, embraced movies that you have not seen.
That is correct.
So why is that exactly? What's your aversion to movies?
Well, it's well documented that I've only seen 3 films: Groundhog Day, Jurassic Park, and Man on the Moon.
Well, those are all pretty good.
No, there's a lot of. I find that if I'm going to sit down and dedicate time to watch a movie, I really have to be in the right mindset. I've never been one who can casually at 4:00 in the afternoon after work say I'm gonna pop on a movie, because I feel like it's a commitment. And there's a lot of really famous films and beloved films that I have never been willing to make the time for and emotional investment in, which is why I'm one of the few people probably who has never seen a single Lord of the Rings film,
Oh my God.
nor a single Harry Potter film. A lot of kind of the classic 1980s era films that a lot of people reference all the time, people of our era who are nostalgic. I have not seen. I couldn't tell you the first thing about the Karate Kid, Chris.
Okay.
I didn't watch Back to the Future until probably about 3 years ago.
I was going to ask you about Back to the Future. Okay, so what did you think?
Oh, it was great. I can see why everyone's talking about it these days. For a film that came out, I believe the year I was born, was it 85?
85, yeah.
Yeah. So I gave it a solid, 35, 36 years before I was willing to dip my toe into it. But,
wow. So what got you to eventually, finally pull that pin and sit down and watch it?
A lot of harassment, I think. Okay. I think it is, in order to have a certain amount of, I don't want to say street cred, but in order to be able to participate in conversations, sometimes it does require a certain amount of cultural knowledge and pop cultural knowledge. And I think with that one, I just realized there were a lot of references that friends and family members would make casually, and I didn't understand them.
Yeah.
And so I guess it was
alienating you from your loved ones.
That's right. That's right. But Michael J. Fox brought us back together.
Okay, good. Just like his parents.
Exactly.
He's doing that for families everywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Well, I'm glad you saw it. I don't think there's any way it could have lived up to everything that you had heard about it, right? I mean,
Yeah, and I think that's another. I think that's a genuine problem. I mentioned Lord of the Rings. I have dear friends who just love that film.
mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, I love them.
the whole trilogy,
Mhm.
and it is to the point that in their mind, it's a seminal cultural moment. And I think when anytime there's something that's so beloved by so many people and you've missed out, you do run the risk of disappointing them. It's like when you introduce someone to your favorite band, right? You always got to be careful with that because you love it so much, and then you say to your friend or whoever you've introduced to them, it wasn't that great. Isn't that the greatest thing you've ever heard? And it's awkward when they say, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. So maybe I live in fear of that. Maybe I live in fear of disappointing people, Chris. And I don't want to do that. I never watched the film Jaws, which is wonderful, which I love, until you and I were in the back of a van on a very long road trip, and there was a DVD player in the van.
That's right.
And you said, we're doing this. And I thank you for that, friend.
Is that the only time you've seen it?
Jaws, no, I've seen it since, but
Okay,
it was the first time I had seen it.
Wow. Okay.
And that was in college, I think, when that happened. So it was a long time ago.
Yeah, I this is kind of bad actually. I did the first time I saw Schindler's List was in the VCR that was part of the minivan that my parents drove. The little VCR and TV and the middle console.
Yeah.
Which is I'm going to cut that out actually. That's really bad. That's really embarrassing and anti-Semitic.
Oh no.
Yeah.
A lighthearted film for the road.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that makes sense. You've got to be in the right mindset, which is, I think you're so willing to just go wherever the movie's going to take you that you're not. You know that you have to be prepared for it. Which I actually can respect.
In the same way that if there's a film that I has been on television or that I've caught a large amount of the story, I'm always hesitant to say, yeah, I've seen that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think that there are plenty of films that I have seen, like a film like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right?
Yeah.
I have never sat down and watched that beginning to end. But much like everyone else growing up in the 90s, that seemed to be on like TBS every Saturday morning.
I was going to say it was on every Saturday afternoon.
And so I've collected enough of the story. I kind of figured it out. But can I say that I've seen the movie? I don't know. That's a bold claim.
No, I think you have. Even if it's piecemeal, you've still seen it.
It's like if you land in an airport, can you say you visited a state or a city? I don't know.
All right. So when were you first aware of Groundhog Day?
I remember specifically the first time I saw Groundhog Day. I did not see it in the movie theater, but my parents rented the film from our local video rental store.
Was it First Choice Video?
It most likely was.
Yeah.
And they brought it home, and I remember watching. And the thing that stands out about me is, of course, for those who have seen the film, you know that every day, every new Groundhog Day starts with the clock turning to 6 a.m. and the song "I've Got You, Babe" by Sonny and Cher plays.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember every time that would happen, my mother, just exasperated, would say, "Oh goodness, here we go again. Oh my goodness, how stupid." And that brought me a lot of joy to see the frustration with how ridiculous of a notion that it was, and my mom's inability to control her scoff.
Then put your little hand in mine. Then put your little hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain. Then put your little
Did she like it?
I think so. I mean, my dear mother, calling something stupid has never meant that she didn't enjoy what she was watching. But I remember then, um, uh, at least whatever year that was, however old I was, I remember um, really enjoying it because not that I was well versed in Bill Murray.
Mm-hmm.
I knew him from Ghostbusters,
Right.
and I realized that there's a particular kind of Bill Murray performance that I enjoy more than others,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm much more of a Groundhog Day Bill Murray than I am a Caddyshack Bill Murray.
There's a lot
because
more.
he's funny.
Yeah. There's a lot more depth to who he is in
Yeah,
Groundhog Day.
and both do involve rodents, right? So there is that.
Yeah.
Um, but he's funny. He's irreverent. He's sarcastic. But he also shows a wide range. I mean, that character throughout the course of the film, it's a real roller coaster ride of emotions. And which I also think is why it's kind of hard to categorize the film.
Yeah.
I don't know that you should call it a comedy necessarily. It's more maybe a fantasy.
Right.
But it definitely has some serious notes, but it also has got a lot of laughs. So that makes a good movie in my book.
Yeah, I think the American Film Institute calls it a fantasy.
Yeah.
It's included in their top fantasy films of all time. And so and so the AFI, with including it in its ranking, there's like a certain amount of it's taken more seriously than I guess a lot of comedies.
Well, I suppose I guess at its heart it's a film about finding meaning, and finding meaning in service to other people. That the film doesn't conclude, and Phil Connors doesn't escape this time loop until he begins to look for opportunities to make a positive impact on other people. It's not even just about the love story between him and Rita. That is explored earlier in the film. It's not until this person who starts out so selfish and self-centered, who looks down his nose at the common folk of Punxsutawney, when he comes to love them and appreciate them and know their story, and also uses this gift and this curse that he has of reliving the same day, he uses it to make a positive impact on people's lives, literally going to great lengths to save someone from choking to death. He catches a boy falling out of a tree. But then there's some tragic moments. There's the individual that he encounters every morning who's homeless, who he ignores, and eventually he gets to know the person and he sees the humanity in the person. But sadly, February 2nd was the day that individual was supposed to die. And no matter how much love and care he shows to him, that's something that he can't change. He can't change. And he's gutted by it. But he wants to do good, and he wants to make a positive impact, even if there are some things that he can't change, that are inevitable.
You and I are, optimistically speaking, about halfway through our lives, I would say.
Yeah.
Do you find that that there are you run up against certain limits that come with just getting to be yourself? In other words, like, there are things you learn, you can become better, but you can never be anyone different than you are.
I think if those of us who are middle-aged probably realize that some of our best and worst aspects of our personality are more or less the same as they were when we're younger, in our formidable years.
Yeah.
And all we can do is be mature enough to identify those and mitigate our worst aspects and promote our best and try to do better. I mean, like you say about the character in the film, he doesn't change the fact that he is a quick-witted, clever guy, but he allows himself to look outward rather than always inward. And so I think we all have the ability to grow and be better versions of ourselves, but we're ultimately just the same as we ever were.
Of all my friends, I would consider you perhaps the least impulsive.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
I'm a very measured person.
Right. And yet, there's a thing you've told me about this storied trip to Punxsutawney during your college days.
I don't know. I'm going to assume it was either my friend Mikey or my friend Brad. I don't recall which. But one year, probably 2006, maybe, the decision was made to drive to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, to witness the Groundhog festivities. And so,
how far of a drive would that be from where you were in Moorhead, Kentucky?
It seems like it was probably like 8 hours. I mean, it wasn't.
Wow.
It wasn't a quick trip,
right?
And there's no easy way to get to Punxsutawney. It's as Phil Connors suggests, it's kind of just out there, you know. And we hauled in an SUV and we drove. I skipped class, skipped an economics class to go. Yes, I'm now an economics teacher, so you know it must not have taken. But we drove there. We got there late in the evening, and the whole town, it's a festive time, and there are little statues of groundhogs throughout the town. They really embrace it. There are festivities. There's the prognosticator's ball, I think. They kind of allude to that in the movie. There's parties and stuff that people are going to.
You're missing all the fun. These people are great. Some of them been partying all night long. They sing songs till they get too cold, and then they go sit by the fire and they get warm, and then they come back and they sing some more.
Yeah, they're Hicks, Rita.
We took up residence in an old high school that, to my knowledge, was not being used anymore, but they would let passersby come, and for $5 a night, you could just put down a mattress on the floor of this old high school and sleep there. Then the thing that is not accurate about Groundhog Day is Gobbler's Knob is not in the middle of the town square. It's out of town in a wooded area. We had to get on a school bus and go out there, and I wasn't prepared for what I was going to see. There were thousands and thousands of people very early in the morning, partying, fireworks, a lot of alcohol. I recall one intoxicated young man slapping me on the back and saying, all this is for Phil, man. The fireworks, the crowds. And then when they announced, when Phil said that he had seen his shadow, there was a boo came out of that crowd as if he were the greatest heel of all time. And people immediately started leaving. They came, they were disappointed, and they were off. But no, it was I'm glad to say that I did something so ludicrous during my college years.
What's the point? I mean,
isn't that the point of the film, Chris? What's the point?
Well, I mean, there are things we do like that for the fun of it, get hyped up by our friends and stuff. But I mean, that's a long round trip, a very long round trip for something so silly.
It was dumb. But you know, that's the point in your life where you can say, it probably started with like a joke. It probably was like, hey, I bet you'd never drive there to see that groundhog get pulled out of the stump. And I bet somebody just said, oh yeah, well, I'll show you how much I love that groundhog. And then they just kind of asked me if I wanted to come along, and why not? You know, one of the things, speaking of not the point, one of the things I do appreciate about that movie is at no point is there an attempt to explain why this is happening to the person. I think there's a lot of movies where something fantastic happens and you've got You've got a Jiminy Cricket. You've got a Yoda. You've got a Morgan Freeman as God, right?
There's even a
That
part actually like when they're at the bar in the hotel. It almost seems like that bartender could have been like the guy who would turn around and kind of wink like he knows what's happening to Phil. Yeah, but like you said, I'm very glad
he
they
never does.
never. No.
Yeah, and it's up to the viewer to kind of interpret that for themselves, and I think that makes it a better movie. If somebody, if it had been the barkeeper, if at some point he'd said, "Let me tell you," if he'd slid him a drink and said, you know,
Like he knew his drink order already.
yeah, like that I think would have cheapened it. And so I appreciate the fact that they don't make an attempt to explain specifically why this has happened. Only it is up to they tell a story, and the viewer can infer what needed to happen in order for the day to progress. And I appreciate that bit of mystery.
Yeah. I'm glad the movie didn't sidestep that. How long do you think he was in Punxsutawney?
So I rewatched the movie a while ago,
Okay,
and I thought about that. So I Googled it, and I think Harold Ramis apparently said in an interview it was 10 or so years. But I think a popular idea, at least on the internet, is that you've probably heard the idea that it takes 10,000 hours to master any skill.
Right.
And throughout the film, he masters several. He becomes a master ice sculptor, a master pianist.
Right.
And so there's a calculation that it might have been 33 years. They don't show 33 years worth of Groundhog Days, but I would guess that if you calculated how many times it suggested there was a new day, every time Rita slaps him in the face, every time we hear the thing, that's, I would think, well over 100. So I don't know. I kind of appreciate that too, that they don't specifically say, I have been here for 23 years and 6 months. And
yeah, I mean,
the best we get is when he says it's cold and it's gray. And it's gonna live. It's gonna last the rest of your life, however long that is.
I wondered about that. Like his virtuosic piano playing alone. That would take many years to get that good.
Yeah.
I took piano lessons for 5 years. I can't play like that. So I wondered then if there were like whole years of his life, day by day, devoted to learning to play the piano or devoted to ice sculpting.
And
I'm
even
sure it takes a little
things
time
that
to
he
learn the
learns
Heimlich
about
too.
The other things he learns about other people would have the people in the diner, the fact that he knows the kid's going to fall out of the tree and know exactly the second. One would think that would take, in and of itself, to get to know people this well, would take hours of conversation, presumably over days each. And he seems to know everybody in the town and their whole life story. So I think it is safe to assume that this has been years and years and years that he has been doing this.
If you had to boil it down, like not explaining like exactly the plot, but what the movie is actually really about, what would you say?
I think the movie is about taking time to recognize the humanity in other people and not being so self-centered on our own ambition and goals. At the beginning of the film, the character doesn't care about where he's going. He wants to get out as quickly as he can. He, as I said, he looks down at people. He makes fun of people. And by the end, he loves all of them and they all love him back. And he is far happier at the end of that film for having the life that he's been given than he otherwise would have been. And so, fantasy aside, I think it's about seeing the dignity and humanity in other people and finding purpose in that community.
Thank you for listening to Why This Movie. If you have a movie that you love that you'd like to talk about, email me at christopherallenmaloney@gmail.com, and you may be featured on an upcoming show.